let's talk about Jerry Coyne and FFRF again. Now, last week, I made a video because I'll try to sum this up, and I'll leave a link for the original video down below here. What happened is that Jerry Coyne, the biologist who wrote books like Why Evolution is True and Faith versus Fact, which is all about how religion and science are not compatible, which, by the way, I will say, I think those are good books. He actually published an anti-trans article basically denouncing trans people, dehumanizing them, and all of that. And I'll run through a couple of things he said that I'm really not happy with. But he wrote this anti-trans article. And even worse, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a group I really like, they published it on their website. And I don't know what FFRF was thinking, but someone at FFRF, from what we know, one of the co-presidents of the group, decided to post this on their website. Now, really quickly, there was a lot of backlash. FFRF took down the post. They put up a different article saying, hey, everybody, we support LGBTQ rights. But they didn't actually explain what Jerry Coyne said that was problematic. That's on them. And they didn't really explain how Jerry Coyne's piece ended up on their website. So that's all very strange, and FFRF has some explaining to do. But anyway, a lot of backlash about that because in his piece, Jerry Coyne said a lot of things that we should all be disturbed by. He tried to argue that gender is just binary and it's not complicated, and implying that anyone who says they're trans is just lying to themselves. But as I mentioned in that previous video, even going beyond the chromosomes are all that matter argument, Jerry Coyne also argued that trans women are more likely to be sex predators than cisgender women, which has no basis in reality. He was actually using like misleading statistics to make that argument. And then he said trans women should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. They should not be allowed to be counselors at women's shelters. And they should always be placed, if they're guilty of a crime, they should always be placed. Sorry, let me correct that. They should never be placed in women's prisons. And again, we can go through all of those. I tried to do that last week as to why that's so problematic. I wanted to give you some updates. Give me 1 second here. I wanted to give you some updates as to what's happened since he posted all that garbage online. And there's a few specific things I wanted to mention. I'm going to play you a clip first. This comes from our old friend, David Silverman, who used to be the president of American Atheists. And then he was accused of sexual misconduct. And then he basically imploded. And now he's like the advisory board leader for a right-wing MAGA atheist group. But he posted a video this week where he's basically saying, I will play you a short clip of it, and then we'll talk about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to have an onslaught of school prayer. We are about to lose so many wars because our absolutely fucking incompetent atheist movement decided a few years ago that once you get the Democrats in charge, they would never, ever, ever be a Republican in charge again. So they decided to tell all the Republicans to fuck off. And now the entire atheist movement has zero friends, zero Republican friends. The Secular Coalition for America. It's been in business since 2002. How many Republican friends do you have over there? Is it zero? How about you, American Atheists? How about you, American Humanist Association? Do you three organizations combined have a grand total of zero Republican friends? Between the three of you, is it true that you have zero friends in power right now after all those years? And is it true that you did that deliberately? The three organizations abandoned atheism for leftism. You abandoned us. And here we are at our moment of need.
There's something, so I should have told you, by the way, I forgot to mention this. I sped that up a little bit to meet social media requirements earlier. But what Silverman's basically saying is that it's the people who are calling out Christian nationalism in the Republican Party and the groups that are fighting church-state separation who have apparently not reached out to Republican. It's their fault that our country is heading down this theocratic path, which makes absolutely no sense because the people who have been critical of Donald Trump and critical of Christian nationalism have also been filing lawsuits to stop Christian nationalism and to protect church-state separation. What has Dave Silverman and his right-wing MAGA atheist group been doing? They pay money to go put up a table at CPAC, the right-wing crazy conference, not because they want to convince people to buy into reason, which I can actually understand that argument. Like, you're all crazy here. We're trying to speak logic and reason to you. No. They pay money to get a table at CPAC because that's how they recruit members for their right-wing MAGA atheist group. That's how low Dave Silverman and his group have sunk. And now what is he doing? He's blaming all the, what he would call woke progressive atheist groups that actually do the battling and the church-state separation fighting and the lawsuits. He's going after them because he's like, why have you not made any Republican friends? That's your fault. Which, one, why would you? You don't need to be friends with crazy people who are trying to create a theocracy. That's dumb. I don't want like moderate Democrats who are like, you know who has some good ideas? RFK Jr. No, we don't need those people. Screw them. We need people who are willing to fight and push back against anti-science, right-wing crazy nonsense. And also, Dave Silverman's argument there is, my group, my MAGA atheist group, we have been reaching out to Republicans. Okay, where has that gotten you? Literally today, as I said in the last video, Mike Johnson gave a fake prayer misattributed to Thomas Jefferson as his opening act in the new Congress. Republicans have not gotten more secular. They've gotten more right-wing Christian crazy. They've gotten more extreme. So thanks, Dave, for befriending all these Republicans. I'm glad they're really listening to you there. Like, the utter gall of these people who are like, well, no one on the left wants to be my friend because I assaulted, allegedly, all these people. Well, if they don't want to be my friends, you know who's totally fine with accused predators? Everyone in the Republican Party, especially Christians. So let me go warm up to them because they love me. Apparently, being an asshole to everybody gets me pretty far on the right. So now he's part of a right-wing group. So I wanted to show you that video because hilarious. And also because Silverman's group, one of the things that has happened since Jerry Coyne's article was taken down, and I mentioned this last week, Jerry Coyne and Richard Dawkins and Steven Pinker, all of whom are like on the anti-trans side of the universe, they all resigned from the honorary board of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And Pinker apparently has joined Silverman's MAGA group as an advisor. And I think Coyne and Dawkins have already been approached about it, but they haven't said yes yet. So that's where they're heading. These are all guys who are like, well, I'm proudly liberal. I'm classically liberal. But also, all these liberals keep making me want to vote for Trump or support right-wing crazy people. I don't know how many of them would vote for Trump, but again, you could see what Silverman's talking about. These guys all hang out with, all are friends with the MAGA extremists because those are the ones who really love anti-trans arguments. And you think any of them care about the God stuff? No. The atheism stuff they will put up with as long as you're fighting against trans people, then you're on their side. You know what I mean? So that's the update with like the Pinker crowd. Let me show you this as well. Speaking of Dawkins, Dawkins posted an article today. Let me share this with you here. This is from a right-wing, it's like the Fox News website, but in the UK, The Spectator. And here's Dawkins, the myth of the God-shaped hole. And there was a time not long ago, I'd be like, yes, I love this. A lot of Christians like to say atheists have a God-shaped hole in our hearts and we need to fill it with Jesus. And here's Dawkins saying, no, that's a myth. I like that. That sounds great. What does Dawkins actually say in this piece? I actually don't care about the God-shaped hole part, but here's where we get to. Look at this. Unbelievable. An irritating strain of the great Christian revival is the myth of the God-shaped hole. When men choose not to believe in God, then they believe in anything. the famous aphorism which G.K. Chesterton never uttered, is enjoying one of its periodic dustings off, following the vogue for women with penises and men who give birth, which obviously just a slam on trans people. Whenever I sound off against this modish absurdity, I'm met with a barrage of accusations. Frankly, Richard, you did this. You defended woke BS for years. What? Like, Richard Dawkins is like, I'm the victim here because I was so liberal that I made it okay for people to be trans. But also, look at how he dismisses it. Uh, Richard Dawkins is like, oh, if you're a trans woman, then you're just like cosplaying as trans because you're really just a woman with a penis. And he calls it Vogue, as in they're just doing it because it's popular, not because they actually are trans. They're just hopping on like some trans bandwagon or something, which is just that is what you say when you've never spoken to trans people in your life. Wait, we're not done yet. What else does he say? He then quotes someone from The Spectator, which again, it's like the Fox News in UK. He says, here's Debbie Hayton on The Spectator's website writing, mostly reasonably, about a recent episode in which Jerry Coyne, Steven Pinker, and I resigned from the honorary board of an atheist organization that's been taken over by the trans cult. We'll just stop there for a second. He thinks FFRF, the group, by the way, the group that posted Jerry Coyne's anti-trans essay and has received a lot of well-deserved criticism for doing that, he thinks that group has been taken over by the trans cult. What is the trans cult? We you know what he's talking about, because obviously there's no cult. He's just talking about people who support trans rights and trans people. Like, if you support civil rights for trans people, he thinks you're part of a trans cult. I don't even know. As he's Richard Dawkins, he's talked about religious extremism for decades. He knows the difference between a religion that's wrong about everything and a cult. Like, I know some people use those words interchangeably. Dawkins is not one of those people. He knows the power of the word cult. He knows the power of the word extremist. You know what I mean? And here is Dawkins, like, it's part of a trans cult. Why? Because they said maybe treat trans people like humans. And Dawkins is like, that is cult-like behavior. He said another thing here. Look at this. He goes on. Unbelievable here. Because do you remember this article is about that God-shaped hole in our hearts, by the way? We gave up on that a long time ago. He's still going. I'll just support the claim that the transsexual bandwagon, it's a band, it's just popular. That's why people are being the trans. The transsexual bandwagon is a form of quasi-religious cult based on faith, not evidence. Hey, you want evidence? I've met trans people. There's your fucking evidence. What is this based on faith shit? It denies scientific reality. Like all religions, it is philosophically dualistic. Where conventional religions posit a soul separate from the body, the trans preacher posits some kind of hovering inner self capable of being born in the wrong body. First of all, when he calls you a preacher, you know it's his greatest form of insult. The trans preacher seems to think you could actually be born into the wrong body. Like, yeah, buddy, that's what is going on. Again, if you've talked to trans people, or I should say, have anyone in your life who cares about you, they would tell you all this. They would explain this to you. It's not a cult. These are actual people. They're not doing it because it's a fad. They're doing it because it's who they are. And maybe today, more so than 10, 15 years ago, in some areas, it's a little more accepted. And that's why more people are coming out instead of hiding it. and struggling and suffering. Like, I am not an expert in anything trans. I'm like a bystander. I'm a cis bystander here. But I've talked to trans people. I've read what they have to say. It's not that hard to do. He goes on. The cult mercilessly persecutes heretics. No, they don't. As apparently the member of a cult. Who are the heretics here? The heretics, in my view, would be Nancy Mace trying to say, oh, I have a trans colleague in Congress now. Let me make her life miserable and try to pass a rule that she's not allowed to use the bathroom, which, by the way, didn't make it into the Republican rules today. Interesting. But yeah, we should go after people like that. Richard Dawkins makes it sound like, who are the heretics? Guys like him who deny that trans people exist. That's heretical behavior. Like, everyone's a heretic unless you think trans people deserve civil rights? Absurd. He goes on. It abuses vulnerable children. Too young to know their own mind, encouraging them to doubt the reality of their own bodies. In extreme cases, inflicting on those bodies irreversible hormonal and even surgical damage. That is right-wing propaganda that whole time. First of all, like, do you know when I knew I was cis? When did you know you were cis? Or if you are heterosexual or gay, when did you know that? When did you have your first crush on somebody? Like, I don't know. I can think back to second grade, third grade. How old was I then? 7, 8? I pretty much knew I liked girls. And by the way, if you're gay, I'm pretty sure it's the same age when you're like, oh no, I think I like someone of the same sex. So this idea that you think trans people as children do not realize that everyone's calling them this, and this is like their body makeup, but it's not who they really are. You think they have no idea of it? No, maybe they can't put it to words. Maybe they don't quite know what it is that's wrong, but something's off. And if they're younger today, maybe because people are speaking out about it, maybe they have a better idea that this actually describes me perfectly. So this idea that children are too young to know their own mind, fine, Richard, tell us what age you think you would be okay with someone saying he or she is trans. He doesn't have an answer for that because at no age would he be okay with that. And then he says, in extreme cases, they're inflicting on those bodies irreversible hormonal and even surgical damage, which makes it sound like teachers are encouraging kids to be trans. That's not a thing. Or doctors are saying, hey, you're having doubts about your gender. You know what I have for you? Here's a puberty blocker. That's not how it works in any case. Like, these fools are just making up things and spreading the lie. You remember, this has maybe gone out of style today, but when marriage equality was a thing and gay people were starting to come out, there were all the talking points about how older gay people were trying to recruit younger ones because they can't have biological kids of their own. And of course, that's a lie as well. Here's Dawkins doing the same thing, suggesting that adults are trying to trans children, even though they don't want to be, even though they're not ready for it. None of these people could ever explain to you the number of hurdles trans kids and maybe accepting parents have to go through to get any sort of hormonal treatment. They're not doing these irreversible surgeries when the kid's like a child. And if it happens, it's in very rare cases where there's a lot more nuance that these guys are not familiar with. And then one more paragraph here. Far from playing into the hands of these preachers, my colleagues and I are opposed to all faith creeds. Well, that's nice. All non-evidence-based belief systems. I like that. This includes traditional supernatural religions, but it also includes younger faith systems, such as that in which a man literally becomes a woman or a woman a man by fiat. He thinks trans people just wake up one day and say, you know what? I don't like being a man. I guess I'm going to be a trans woman now. Again, this man has nobody in his life who loves him enough to tell him, like, that's not at all how this thing works at all. As someone with like no friends, I know this. And then he says, or by legal decision, you could as well legally repeal the laws of thermodynamics so we can have perpetual motion machines. So apparently, if you like change your driver's license or retroactively change your birth certificate to reflect your gender, that's part of a cult. That's religious. You guys are as bad as Catholics and Muslims, and you know how much Richard Dawkins doesn't like Catholicism or Islam. Like, it's just prejudice. It's just bigotry. And this is who Richard Dawkins is now. The funniest thing I find about this is Richard Dawkins will do interviews, and he says this all the time. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Why do people keep asking me about trans people? I want to talk about evolution. I want to talk about biology, but they keep asking me about trans people. Yeah, Richard, you know why? Because it's all you talk about. He wrote this essay apropos of nothing, and all he's doing is shitting on trans people and saying they're part of a cult and that allies of the trans community belong to some, what did he say, quasi-religious organization, and they just believe trans people wake up one day and change gender. Like, again, not at all how it works, but that's Richard Dawkins today. He is just a right-wing troll at this point. I got one last update to this story as well. I found, well, I didn't find, I saw this other update. Richard Dawkins used to have a foundation, like the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science. And years ago, it merged with the Center for Inquiry, which is a secular group based in New York. And the Center for Inquiry has a magazine it publishes called Free Inquiry. Let me make sure I could get this. There we go. Free Inquiry is one of their magazines. I think it's technically separate. It doesn't speak for the organization. It's not their newsletter, but they all work out of the same office and it's the same people. Well, the guy who is one of the, I think he's the editor now, but Ron Lindsay, who used to run the Center for Inquiry, but now heads up Free Inquiry magazine, he just posted this article called The Regrettable Dogmatism of FFRF. And there's a couple things in here. He's doing all the Dawkins stuff. But look at this. He's saying he's so mad that FFRF took down Coyne's essay. Look what he says. And exactly which values and principles did Coyne's essay violate? Because that's what FFRF said. They said, we don't agree with his values and principles. Coyne made no disparaging remarks about transgender individuals. Are you kidding me? Do you all remember what he said about trans individuals? Let me show you a clip here. Boom. This is what Jerry Coyne wrote in his article. Look right above my head here. Transgender, then, appears to be twice as likely as natal males and at least 14 times likely as natal females to be sex offenders. Jerry Coyne argued that all trans people are more likely to be sex offenders based on a misleading statistic put out by a hate group that was taking numbers from prison. And he said, well, based on those numbers, all trans people are more likely to be dangerous to you. And I go back to what did Ron Lindsay say about it? Coyne made no disparaging remarks about transgender individuals. And I'm going to show you one more. What else did Jerry Coyne say? Here's one more thing he said. Look at the bold. Transgender women, for example, should not compete athletically against biological women, should not serve as rape counselors and workers in battered women's shelters, or if convicted of a crime, should not be placed in a women's prison. And Ron Lindsay says Coyne made no disparaging remarks. What are those then? Like, that's straight up bigotry. And Ron's like, meh, he didn't say anything I found wrong. What else do we have here? That wasn't what I wanted to highlight. Here we go. Look at this. American society needs an open, temperate, balanced discussion of some of the issues presented by the transgender phenomenon. He too is arguing this is some sort of fad. And that, hey, you know, we should have a debate on civil rights, humanity of trans people. No, some things are not open for debate. Substitute any other group in place of transgender phenomenon. And like, yeah, do you think, I don't know, people of this color should be allowed to vote? We should have a balanced discussion on that. No, we shouldn't. You're just wrong. That's it. There's your debate. I win. We don't need a debate on civil rights or the humanity of trans people. There's no debate to be had. There are just bigots who lie about stuff and normal people. And look at this. Oh, this is great. Let me close by previewing a portion of Free Inquiry's next issue out in a couple of weeks. By happy coincidence, it includes a symposium on various transgender controversies. That symposium presents a range of different viewpoints, some with which Kat Grant would probably agree, and some with which Jerry Coyne would probably agree. At Free Inquiry, we are committed to a culture of free speech, and we trust our readers to evaluate contrasting arguments. Our readers do not need ideological gatekeepers. Right, but apparently they need bigots who are going to blow the door wide open and say, hey, does anyone want to write an article about why trans people shouldn't be allowed to play sports in high school, or how they shouldn't be allowed to be in public spaces because they're sex predators? Because we need someone who's willing to give that side of the debate, and we're going to publish you in our magazine. That's what that's what Free Inquiry is doing. He has this little disclaimer at the end. Views expressed are mine alone. They don't necessarily reflect the views of the Center for Inquiry or the Council for Secular Humanism. But also, he's the editor of their magazine, and he used to run the organization. And also, the organization, not just this guy, but CFI as an organization, has put out anti-trans content in the past. I made a video about this months ago. Their current CEO wrote an article basically saying racism doesn't really exist in America anymore because we elected Barack Obama and Clarence Thomas is on the Supreme Court. So who needs affirmative action? Who needs reparations? Racism's done now. Shut up. Like, that's the Center for Inquiry for you. And I guess we all have this to look forward to in a couple of weeks. Many pages of people debating whether trans people should have rights and be allowed to exist in our society. Yay. Oh, I forgot. There are a couple more things I'm going to show you. Check this out really quick. This is Dave Silverman's right-wing MAGA group and Peter Boghossian, the right-wing professor. Wokeism consumed the atheism movement and drove the return to Christianity. Yeah, like it's atheists' fault that some people are more Christian, even though the statistics say Christianity is actually less popular than it used to be. I don't get that at all. But okay, let's blame the woke atheist movement for why I don't know who returned to Christianity. To which the right-wing atheist group says, wokeism is Christianity. Whoops, let me bring that back. Wokeism is Christianity. If true atheists do not get organized soon, we will be crushed between a hammer of woke and an anvil of theists. Which sounded really great in his head and makes absolutely no sense. What's a true atheist? You guys, am I a true atheist? Apparently I'm not, because I think people deserve civil rights. I don't know how this works. And also this idea that atheists need to get organized. First of all, good luck with that. We are unorganizable. But also, all of this is about the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is a group with 40,000 members and like a $26 million budget. They're organized. They're filing lawsuits. They're doing a lot of stuff. If you don't like it, that's one thing. But to pretend that that's not true atheism for you, because they also care about trans people, weird. And my favorite thing from this Dave Silverman MAGA group, look at this. Look at the bottom tweet there. They're responding to somebody who says, what kindness did you show Jerry Coyne? They're yelling at FFRF. What kindness did you show Jerry Coyne when you took down his article without telling him and publicly denouncing him? That's grammatically wrong, but okay. But at the top, because they say this completely seriously, the ratios will continue until morale improves. I think they're serious about that. And what that means is if FFRF tweets something, they are responding to it by like challenging FFRF. And on Twitter these days, as I'm sure you know, that's Elon Musk's right-wing crazy extremist website today. And so when the right-wing group gets a lot of likes and retweets, they think that counts as activism and a win for their organization. And FFRF, which probably doesn't have a lot of supporters on Twitter anymore because we all left, FFRF doesn't get it. And this group is like, yeah, we're doing activism right because we get more hearts on our troll posts than you do with your actual activism. Therefore, we must be doing it right and you're doing everything wrong. Support us so we can go to CPAC. The ratios will continue until morale improves. Maybe the dumbest thing I have seen from an organization that thinks David Silverman should be their advisor. Oh my God, it's glorious. This thing is just unmasking the worst people and they're showing their entire ass. And it's kind of funny. I mean, it's totally sad. Like your heroes suck. But also, yeah, I'm glad this shows people just how monstrous some of these guys are. All right, let's stop there. What questions, thoughts we have here? One can be pro trans rights but oppose frauds, including gender versus sex word game scams. I'm not sure what you're referring to, or scams to pretend sociological role models. I don't know what you mean, so I'm going to skip this comment. What are your thoughts on the future of atheist nonprofit organizations in the wake of recent events? Thank you for that donation. What are my thoughts on the future of atheist nonprofit organizations? I think we're going to see a lot of the same stuff we saw in 2016, which is a lot of these atheist groups are fighting church-state separation battles. And it's not so much anti-atheist so much as they want 10 commandments in public schools, as we've talked about. They want prayer in school. They want Bibles in schools. And so who's going to fight that stuff? The ACLU doesn't do all this. So you need other groups that are willing to push back, explain why this is bad for everybody. And those groups are going to be doing a lot of that work. I think they're all going to need larger legal departments. I think along the way, you can make a case for why not atheism per se, but religion is not leading us to a better place. And you want a group making that argument in whatever way they think will be heard by as many people as possible. So I think these groups are going to, there's not that many of them at the national level, but I think the ones that are there at the national level will continue to grow. And I, by and large, support most of the work all of these groups do. At the same time, you're going to want to see local activism as well. So local groups, whether they're atheist groups, humanist groups, whatever you want to call them, there might be a need to rally the troops in person to fight against school boards that want to push religion in schools. So that means in-person activism will hopefully grow as well. I mean, we're going to find out very soon what, resistance 2.0 looks like. And I hope a lot of these, if not the atheist organizations, I hope they're leading the charge. But even if they don't, I hope all of you who are atheists, but who also care about the state of our society, are going to be active in some way. I don't care what group you do it with. Figure out what cause matters to you. Find a group that's doing that work. Support them and go work with them and figure out how to make it happen locally. You're going to need these organizations that know how to rally people and do big things when it's necessary. So I'm hopeful. I mean, about everyone except Dave's group, which I think they just want to be trolls online. If someone tries to dehumanize trans people like me, then they should not be considered humanists. Thank you for that donation, Lady Merlin. I mean, I agree with you. Then they would not be considered humanists. I don't think they care to be humanists. I think those people, the dehumanizing ones, think humanism is too woke anyway. Unfortunately, you can be an atheist and still be an asshole. There's nothing about atheism that is separate from being irrational, from being an asshole to everybody. So I don't think they see that as a contradiction. Speaking as a mental health professional, I can categorically state that transphobia is nothing more than bigotry. There's no reason for it, and the dehumanizing needs to stop. Touche. I fully support you there. You're right. Thank you. It's effed up that these groups and people have decided that trans people are the only group not worth defending or fighting for their rights. Literally the only group. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. They will do it to other groups as well. They will do it to ethnic minorities. They're doing it right now to Palestinians. The same people are doing it to Black communities that are fighting for rights, civil rights, voting rights, what have you. They'll go after them too. They think it's all bullshit. So they are right now vocally going against trans people, and that's become like a rallying cry for the MAGA crowd. But those same people, and including the same atheists, I have also seen them go after other minorities while siding with the religious right because they all hate the same people. And nothing flips the switch in their mind that says, if we're friends with these people, maybe something should be, maybe there's something wrong here if all of a sudden everything the Christian right does, we like. Because that is essentially what they are doing now. And they think being an atheist gives them a seat at the table when really all those other people are like, wow, we can just keep doing everything we've been doing in the name of Jesus and you guys are just on board with it? Great. Bye. We don't care what you have to say, but thanks for your votes. Like, these atheists are being used by the religious right and they're too dumb to realize what's happening. Atheist movement? Since when was atheism a monolith? Are we playing this game again? Atheism is not an ideology, it's a rejection of one. I mean, that is true. It's the dictionary definition of it. However, if you are an atheist in this country, how does that come into play? Well, if people are trying to get Bibles in public schools, I mean, I would hope everyone's opposed to that, but atheists have a vested interest in making sure one religion isn't treated as superior to other religions or no religion. So who fights against that? Atheist organizations that care about that stuff. Atheist organizations, which of course do not represent all atheists, but they have done so much good work when it comes to pushing back against violations of church-state separation, in the cases of discrimination, representing the atheists. So this idea that no one said atheism was a monolith. Richard Dawkins is an example of that. That guy's an asshole. I don't want to be associated with that guy. But to argue that there's no movement, even though, like what, close to 90% of atheists vote for Democrats and Democratic policies just about across the board, like, we vote in very similar ways. So even if you don't think there's an official movement, there's no atheist pope. But guess what? Just like Black people in America, they're on political issues, they're very much on one side of the fence in agreement. Doesn't mean they're a monolith. It doesn't mean there's no diversity of opinion in there. But as a group, they tend to vote the same way. I could say the same thing about white evangelicals. They don't have a leader, but there is a movement because so many of them believe in the same things. And they know that if you work together on that common cause or causes, you have a better chance of making it happen. Atheists ought to do the same thing on those issues where pretty much all of us are in agreement. And guess what? On LGBTQ rights, we are in agreement. And it's not where Richard Dawkins is. Thanks for that donation, Elizabeth. Friendly reminder, trans women are women. Binary gender does not exist. You can be XXY, XYY with hormone disorders, etc. Thank you to Hemant and Den and Jess, my podcast co-host, and the whole team for being awesome. I appreciate that. I hope I'm a good ally, and please call me out on it if you think I'm not. What the fuck is happening to all the people I used to look up to? Just keep looking down and down and down. Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I liked these guys when I was relatively new to atheism. I mean, I was already an atheist when they became popular for being atheists, so they did not personally influence me, but I kind of liked that there were these people who were speaking about atheism in a coherent, powerful way. Their books were good in that sense. And now I think because people don't really care about atheism anymore, they miss the high of being right about something everyone else they believe is wrong about. So they see all these people who are like, trans people are humans and they deserve rights. And they're like, no, you're all wrong. And all these people I surround myself with tell me I'm the smartest person in the world, and they look up to me and they praise me. And it's J.K. Rowling syndrome. Like, once Harry Potter ended, her brain broke, and she's like, no one's paying attention to me anymore. I got it. Let me pretend I'm the champion of all women, and let me just trash trans people. And everyone just, if you're a bigot, you look up to these guys and her and people like that, and they miss having that adulation and being right. And I think it's just reflexive contrarianism. They just like telling everybody they're wrong about something. And with trans people, they could be like, well, I know chromosomes better than everyone else. So I'm going to pretend that when trans people argue for their humanity, what they're really saying is, I woke up one day and my chromosomes changed. Like, that's the sort of straw man they create. But they're like, well, I know chromosomes, so trans people don't exist. Tell me I'm right. Everyone buy my books, come to my stage shows, and watch people give fawning interviews of me. It's so weird. One day it'll happen to me too, and I hope you all hate me at that time. I would say give it a couple years. I'm not there yet, I hope. Men who give birth. Gotta love the secondary meaning that cis women are just baby makers. Very true. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, that's all women are to them. They're birth givers and nothing else of value, to Richard Dawkins. Trans argument is the distraction. I don't know what that's the context of that, but I think that sounds about right. Thanks, Elizabeth. I don't like throwing mental health terms around, but Dawkins, Hitchens, etc. might need some serious therapy to gain some empathy. May I suggest, forget the mental health terms, I think they just need friends. I think they need people in their life who are willing to tell them they are wrong about stuff. I've said this before. I only surround myself with people who tell me I'm an idiot, and I think it helps me. And I think if you're rich and famous, and Dawkins and who else? All those people we were just talking about, Jerry Coyne, Steven Pinker. I think it is very easy for them to only have to surround themselves with people who tell them they are right about everything and that they're brilliant. And that, at some level, you don't really need to interact with anybody who thinks you're wrong about anything at some stage. And these guys are all well past that. And they're all on text threads together, I assume, and they're all on the same email lists, and they all message each other at all hours of the day. That's why all of their resignations from FFRF sounded identical, because they all are like just workshopping them with each other, I assume, in my head. They all have the same book agents, things like that too. So like these guys are all buddy buddy, and they have no friends outside their little close inner circle where they all just, I assume, hang out all the time and just tell each other, no, you're brilliant. I'm brilliant? Well, yes, but you're brilliant. I assume that's just what they do all day. Letting that article post and then taking it down, talking about Jerry Coyne's, I assume, and then apologizing for it, got 3 shitty people to up and quit. I may not like the method, but I can't argue with results. That is a fair point, though I wish FFRF had actually done the duty of kicking those 3 people off their honorary advisory board. And here's what I'm looking for in like the week ahead. I want to see if FFRF actually responds in depth to why they posted Jerry Coyne's article and why they took it down. You can't just say, it didn't match our values. Tell me what he said that you think he got wrong so that we know where you stand on these issues. Or is it, because right now, Coyne is just arguing they were afraid of like the woke mob, it was cancel culture. Like, no, FFRF, tell us what he said you disagree with so we know how you stand on these issues. Also, I am curious if they're going to replace those 3 guys on their honorary advisory board with 3 other people. I want to see who they replace them with. Are they people we can actually respect? I hope they do that. I think Matt Dillahunty today just put out a video. I haven't seen it yet, but I think he's basically arguing FFRF needs to do some apologizing today as well. So, yeah, I mean, can't argue with the results, but I would like to see better and more from FFRF. Trans issues and atheism are distinguishable and separate. Dawkins speaks outside his expertise regarding trans issues. I think you're right about that second part. Dawkins is speaking outside his expertise, but again, he thinks he's brilliant on one. He is brilliant on one thing, which is explaining evolution, and he assumes that gives him license to pretend to be an expert on everything. I would argue there's actually, I know what you're saying about trans issues and atheism being separate, but I go back to, there are people who are like, atheists need to stay in their lane, stop talking about abortion, stop talking about feminism, stop talking about LGBTQ issues. Well, who do you think is opposing feminism? And who do you think doesn't want women to be independent? It's a lot of religious conservatives. Who do you think is against abortion rights? Religious conservatives. And those are the arguments they use when they say we should ban abortion, because the laws they write say life begins at conception. That's a religious idea, not a scientific one. So you could say these are all separate areas, but to me, they are using religion to enforce their policies. So as atheists, we have an obligation to push back and say, you don't represent what I believe about these things. So at some level, civil rights, women's rights, reproductive rights, all that stuff, those become our issues because religious groups have made them our issues. So I know what you're saying. They're distinguishable and separate. But if we're not going to stand up for what we believe in, and I know we don't all believe the same things, but most of us believe in this stuff, we got to make these our issues, because it's the logical extension for what happened. Like, if you're an atheist, then why are you even watching this, right? If you don't believe in God, I'm not here to convince you God doesn't exist. So, like, why are you watching? It's probably because as an atheist, you care about some of the same things that I care about. So why do you care about them? Because as an extension of you not believing in God, you also believe humanity and society should work a certain way, and that all people should be able to live their life with freedom, because there is no, afterlife awaiting us. So at some level, if you care about this stuff, it's an extension of your atheism. So these things merge, even if they're not in the exact same lane. I'm trans non-binary and feel at a loss about how to defend my existence. I can't prove what's in my head, but I also feel like I need a defense in today's world. Like, that's required. I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, you shouldn't have to defend your own existence or anything. And I'm not going to suggest I know what a good way for you to defend who you are is. But again, this is the whole thing. Like, you shouldn't have to defend who you are. You're not doing anything wrong. But there are people, and Dawkins and Coyne are now part of that group, that demands they know you better than you know you. And again, who's going to stand up for our trans friends, right? We need organizations. We need individuals who are willing to say Dawkins is full of shit and Coyne is wrong. And groups that use those guys and keep them on their advisory boards or whatever are also, they have problems that they need to fix. So, sorry you feel that way. I don't think you should have to defend your existence. And I hope all of us in the position to be able to defend your rights and humanity are using whatever platform we have to do that. These religious gender police are trying to define binary gender roles in law with this bill. I don't know which bill you're talking about. It's so disturbing. You're probably right. I mean, there are laws trying to define gender roles. I don't know specifically which one you're talking about, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is true. Defective Barbie pointed out HR 9218 codifying by gender roles. Is that Nancy Mace saying, like, the bathrooms in Congress only need to be... Defective Barbie could be any one of, like, 4 Republicans. I'm not sure which one we are talking about right now. Defective Barbie right here. There we go. Pointed out, codifying. Oh my God, I'm so confused. I'm sorry. We'll go back. You'll figure it out. I don't know which bill that is. I'm sorry, off the top of my head. Rowan says, I hope that atheists get more involved with in-person activism and getting their voices heard. I had some luck writing an opinion for a local paper. By the way, I read Rowan's article. I forgot which paper that appeared in, but it was an essay arguing for a lot of these issues. And Rowan, maybe you could share the link in the YouTube comments so that people can see that article. I thought it was well written, but this is the point. Yes, in-person activism makes a difference. Doesn't have to be with an atheist group. Do it with whatever local group supports the causes you support. And yes, write letters to the editor, post things on Facebook that people can share, because if you're just thinking it in your head, you're not influencing anybody else, and you never know who you might be influencing, you know? Anything else there? I'm not an atheist, but I do not like religious hypocrisy and think that people need to find their own way where spiritual identity is concerned. Fair enough. I mean, hypocrisy sucks, and I feel like I don't care where people end up with when it comes to religion and whatever their spiritual identity is. I might think you're wrong. I just feel like that's such a low priority on my list of things that make me mad these days. And so, like, yeah, you do you, be a good person. We can argue about religious differences over beers later on. Doesn't concern us right now. There's more important issues to deal with. So, yeah, I'm right there with you in that sense. I've always appreciated that you made sure you were being respectful to me about identity pronouns. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And again, thanks for all the work you do. I will screw up, by the way. Hope you know it's not coming from a place of malice.